G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Andrena Sawyer from P.E.R.K Consulting based in Baltimore, the United States. Thanks for your time today, Andrena.
Thank you, Troy, for having me.
Let's start with how we know each other. We connected through Podmatch, which is a new platform we've started using to find great guests. And have you been using that very long?
No, just about a month. Someone actually referred me, but it's been such a great find. I've loved it so far.
Yeah, we're about a month in as well, and we're finding some great guests. Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Sure. So my full-time business is P.E.R.K Consulting. We're a consulting firm that's based in Baltimore, Maryland in the United States. And we work with nonprofits and small businesses, providing business development and capacity building support. And a couple of years ago, I actually started a nonprofit for women of color who are interested in starting businesses as well.
Oh, great. I think that's a much needed resource around the world, actually. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was so surprised by how quickly it picked up, which really spoke to the need that people have to find a resource and a hub to serve that audience.
Yep. Great. And then how did you start out?
So I started in full-time entrepreneurship almost 11 years ago. It'll be my 11-year anniversary in January. And I kind of fell into it where I was on one trajectory with work. I thought I was going to be an attorney. And that ended up not working, encountered some closed doors. And so I just kind of went back and reverted back to what always worked for me, which was helping other people in the nonprofit space. But I quickly realized that nonprofits don't have a long shelf life. So they shut down pretty quickly. And the best way that I could maximize my talents was to set up a consultancy that can help them and change that. Right.
Yeah. So that was 2011 you started, January 2011? And yep. How old were you when you decided to make the jump into owning your own business?
I was 25 years old. So you do the math.
And do you have some key numbers to illustrate the growth over those 11 years?
Yeah. So over the last 11 years, we've expanded obviously in capacity. I went from being a solopreneur to now having a team of about 8 people. Obviously, financially, we've grown a lot. From year 1 to year 3, we saw 125% increase in revenue. Yeah, so we've seen quite a lot of growth, pretty much in every area. Obviously, the most important being financial and capacity.
Yep. Yeah, that's fantastic. Great. And what about through COVID? How did that affect growth for you guys?
So honestly, COVID was hard. 2020 was difficult. I mean, like so many other businesses, we were on the brink of facing a shutdown, not necessarily because of what we were doing, but because so many of the clients that we served were forced to close.
Yep.
And so we had to pivot our model for service offerings, and everything is virtual. And to this day, it's actually most of it is still virtual.
Yep.
So we saw a decline in sales. We definitely saw a decline in reach. But thankfully now we're kind of back on an upswing and things are changing slightly.
Were you mostly virtual before COVID?
No, we were in person.
Yep.
So most of our clients, we traveled a lot to meet with our clients. We had business development workshops and service offerings. All of that was in person. And really that was part of the appeal, was how flexible we were with getting out in front of people. And so, the virtual things changed everything for us.
Yeah.
But it's worked. It's working now.
That's great. And the revenue model, is it mainly fees for time or retainers?
Correct. Yep. Mostly retainers and fees for time. We do have probably about 30% of our offerings are event and ticket sales for the workshops that we do. Yep. Part of our model is to reach people to reach businesses that are already established and can afford fee for services. Yep. But then about 30% of our clients are just starting, they're aspiring entrepreneurs, they're solopreneurs. And so while they can't afford a retainer consultant, what they can do is attend workshops that we offer and learn how to do some of the things that we do for themselves.
Great. When was the moment you felt like you'd succeeded?
I think it was probably year 4 when I was able to go on vacation. Actually, year 5 when I was able to go on vacation for the first time, and everything did not burn down. And all it did was signal to me that we finally had some systems that were working.
Yep.
So when I was able to step away, I think that's when I had that first sign that we were onto something.
How many team members were you up to around year 5 when you're on a holiday?
So we were at 4 at that time. We had 2 full-time and 2 part-time.
Mm-hmm. Great. What does success look like to you?
Success looks like peace. You know, I know a lot of people, and even myself when I started, success looked like a specific metric in terms of finances and revenue. But right now, success to me looks like peace. I think in light of everything that 2020 has taught us as individuals, and then as business owners, it's taught me that if I can have peace of mind, that I'm doing what I like to do and it's sustainable, and I'm able to help other people earn a living, then I'm successful.
Yeah, I think COVID's really put that shock into a lot of business owners in particular, and they're now finding a lot more balance and resetting what their success metrics are and their objectives that they're chasing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
To focus on systems, focus on strategies and systems. It's not the fun part of business ownership, because for a lot of us who, when we're starting in business, we just want to do what we do. We just want to create impact. We want to work on the product. But that's not what good businesses do. They provide those services, but as a result of good systems. So figure out a way to work smart and not just hard by creating those systems and automating early on.
Yeah, totally agree. In marketing, if you've got systems set up, the automation, it's not just more efficient, but more constancy of contact with your prospects or your existing customers, and a much better experience.
Absolutely. And marketing is just one side of it. I mean, even with operations, even with the way you provide customer service, if you can automate the segments of your business, I think you're on to something.
Yeah.
It'll save you a lot of work later on.
Yeah. How did you fund the business?
So I started with my own savings capital that I had. A few years in, I was able to start doing some crowdfunding. I did some pitch competitions. The most popular or the most well-known one was the Capital One pitch competition that we won. And that was a few years in. In year 7, we finally decided that it was time to build some business credit and take out a business loan.
Right.
But for the first few years, it was all self-funded.
Yep. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Sorry. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Absolutely. I love what I do. You know, and nonprofits, again, they get this bad reputation for not being a very lucrative space. But I love what I do because, again, I found a way to have sustainable living and create impact for other people. I mean, that synergy there, I don't think I would do life any other way than in that balance. Yeah,
it's a great feeling, isn't it? When you see the light bulb go on in people, when you give them a bit of advice and they start thinking differently and acting differently.
Absolutely. And I've had the pleasure of working with local national organizations here, but also working with international organizations, and to have that kind of a reach where you're helping people and you really just kind of recycling this model and recycling the concepts that you're providing to people, but to have that kind of a reach is really, it's been sobering, and I've loved it.
And can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Yeah, so one of the most stressful things is obviously cash flow, which is one of the reasons why I emphasize to our clients, diversification has to be your friend. Early on, if you can figure out how to diversify your revenue streams and you can automate those streams, again, it'll save you a lot of headache later on. But cash flow is a huge issue. It leads to burnout. Obviously, it leads to business closure. It leads to just a lack of good morale within the team, a lack of productivity.
Yep.
So that is a stressful issue, is cash flow.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the other main issues you see with your clients that you help them, change the way they're doing something or thinking about something in their business?
Yeah. So marketing. I think on the technical side, marketing, emphasizing marketing is not just something that you do or perform, but you really have to develop a culture where you're always pitching.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that looks like just good customer service. And traditionally, we don't like to think of that as marketing or selling or presentation, but it is. And then, of course, you have the technical parts of marketing. So we're talking what your digital spaces look like, what your physical spaces look like, or your physical efforts look like. So marketing as a technical skill, I would definitely emphasize that. I think more of the nuanced soft skills things, I would recommend that new business owners work on resiliency as a skill, like being able to push through and not taking no as a personal rejection.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
It's funny because I can give that latter part of that advice because that was the area I had to work on.
Yeah.
As an introvert, a self-proclaimed introvert, I mean, we process everything all the time. And so learning that when a client chose to go with a competitor and not me was not a personal, it wasn't personal, was definitely something that I had to work on. I think on the technical side, just learning how to do business and looking at the systems of business. I keep saying that word, but it's so important. Was good for me. My background, my educational background, is not in business, and so again, entrepreneurship fell on my lap, and I don't regret it at all. I would do it all over again. But not having that training coming in did not help me. So I had to play a lot of catch up in my industry, and I would recommend to aspiring business owners to study your industry, focus on systems.
Yeah. What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
High turnover. High turnover. The startup culture is busy. It's competitive. And if you're in a space that's not very popular, like the tech spaces, it's hard to find good talent. And so that has been probably one of the more challenging things. It's just managing high turnover, managing people, and just being consistent with that.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
I love that I see the immediate impact. It is, for lack of better words, this is my baby. It's my project that I'm building. And so I love that I can stay up all night and work on my business idea and implement it how I see fit. And the results are a reflection of that effort. So the immediate impact.
And what's been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Again, resiliency.
Yeah.
When you're working in a kind of traditional job setting of 9 to 5, you don't have to worry about that. You produce the deliverables as you're instructed to, and that's really the end of the conversation. Either you've met them or you haven't. But for me, as an entrepreneur or business owner, it doesn't end there. When a client leaves, I have to think about what our evaluation efforts look like. I have to think about how can I get them back if they ever need us again. So the conversation just keeps going. So just shifting my mind from an employee to a business owner who's always engaged and doesn't have the luxury of just turning things off.
Yeah.
I think that was a learning curve for me.
What's the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Number one habit, consistency. Consistency, and that's on the technical side and non-technical side. So with your marketing message, for example, a lot of business owners don't know it takes about 6 impressions for a potential customer to begin to understand your messaging. And so staying consistent, whether it's social media, again, whether it's Google SEO, whether it's your website, staying consistent with that messaging is really important. And just because a potential client or lead says no the first time does not mean that that's a permanent no. So be consistent. And also be consistent with the quality of your service provision. So don't offer high quality services when you're just starting out because you're eager. And then when you figure out how to kind of maintain your business flow, the quality of your service or your product declines. So keep things as consistent as possible.
Yeah, just back on that point of persistence, particularly in sales, is one tongue-in-cheek saying that I have when I'm talking with managers or sales teams, and that is you need to keep the communication up with prospects. Just one stop short of restraining order. It's a joke, but it's because a lot of people think, I won't bother them. They are a little bit too reserved, and you've just got to keep at people because they're busy. Everyone gets busy, and it can sometimes take 8 to 11 times the contact before they'll actually, give you the time to give you a yes or a no.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've been in situations where I might have met a potential client and they said no and they took a business card and then they circled back about 8 months later and said, do you remember we met at, whatever location? And the truth of the matter is I actually don't remember meeting them, but it does speak to the fact that every time we make contact, we never know when that lead will circle back. So
Yeah.
it's really, really important.
Yeah. Jump over to growasmallbusiness.com and leave your details to get a short 2-minute email I send on Fridays to help small business owners like you become better leaders. I include some reading or professional development resources I've discovered in the last week. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Yeah, pick good people. A friend of mine, also in business, told me, you hire slow and you fire quick.
Yep.
And that's been a mantra that I've adopted for myself. You hire slow because it takes time to learn people, ask the right questions during the vetting process. We have to understand part of human nature is we always put our best foot forward. And so that initial interview and that resume is not going to give you the full understanding of who that person is. So do thorough research. And the fire quick part is the minute that you see that something could be detrimental to your team, take action.
Yep.
I have been in situations with team members that I let one bad apple kind of spoil the bunch because I let bad behavior continue for a little bit too long. I had, on one extreme, I had an employee that was stealing from me.
Wow.
And they were very, sneaky and they were able to maneuver that. But the minute you recognize potentially harmful behavior, address it right away. Do not let it fester.
Yeah.
And take your time. Yeah. On the flip side, take your time with getting to know people.
Because the other thing with your leadership's being undermined if you don't act quickly, because the rest of the team members, your A players, are looking at you saying, why aren't you getting rid of this B or C player, this toxic person? So you've got to move quite fast. And it's always hard, isn't it? Because especially the fuzzy ones, if it's not as clear cut as someone stealing from you, but if there's a bit of a bad attitude, it can be a difficult one to make a call on. But at the end of the day, it's your job.
Absolutely. And I will say this to any women leaders in the audience, it's especially important for us. And I think obviously I have a bias about that, but I think as a woman, when you're in leadership, we see that. We see people try to undermine it. We see our emotions getting tied into our leadership styles a lot. And so asserting yourself, make no apologies about having to assert yourself and to cut out toxic behavior. It's really, really critical for the team morale.
And on that, how have you managed that old professional services juggling act of, building up business and you got to hire the next person, building up business, the next person, it's very start-stop, moving to those plateaus. How did you handle that, or how did that go for you over the last 11 years?
So when we started, it was hard. Every time you stop, it almost feels like you're mourning a loss of sorts, and then you have to start and build a whole new relationship. But one of the things that's critical to our culture now is to make sure that we maintain relationships with people. Mm-hmm. So even if the services have ended, we maintain communication via our digital communication with them. Once a year, we send out holiday cards. Even if a client hasn't had services, performed by us in 6 years, they're still going to get that touch point from us because we want you to know, should you ever need us in the future, we're still here. It's kind of our way of kind of waving our hands and staying top of mind with them. But it was hard adjusting to that at the start. Now it's a little bit easier because you understand that's just the nature of the work that we do. And if you've done your job well, it's actually a good thing, because if they no longer need your services, assuming things ended amicably, then it means that you did your job well.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a sign of affirmation. Yeah, and you want to duplicate that. You want to get that feeling of a client saying, thank you so much. I think I've got it from here.
What about the resourcing juggle of, making that decision to add that next team member on when have you got enough billables to cover, et cetera? Like how did you go with that dilemma?
Yeah. So our pricing model kind of helped with that a lot. So with resource allocation, we include all of that. We have a very inclusive fee structure where we anticipate what's needed, and then we offer our clients the option to be able to pay for those things as an included part of the service. So they have no add-ons, there are no surprises. So when we're talking about resources that are allocated for those specific projects, our client actually takes care of that. There are no surprises on their end, and there are no surprises on our end.
Yeah.
Am I understanding your question correctly, Troy?
No, I think what I'm getting at there is running a professional services firm. You're kind of always on that hamster wheel where you've got to build up the billables, have enough work, and then especially if you start out on your own, and then you then go, right, now it's time to take my first team member on, and then you build billables up again, and then making that jumping that plateau every time, just before you have to take on the next team member. That having that confidence in, I guess, the billables or the revenue coming in to be able to cover that next team member. Like, how did you go with that journey over the last 10 years?
Oh, that's great. Okay, so I misunderstood the question, but I think I understand it now. And one of the ways that we do is we hire on a per project basis. And so we don't take on the cost of having an employee retained with us or as part of our internal system if we know that there's a likelihood that after a project ends, we might not be able to afford to keep them.
Got it. Yeah.
And so does that answer the question
a
little bit more? Yeah. Okay, yep. So we have contractors that we hire on a per project basis, and we just kind of keep them on standby. And then we have our core team, and they're always ready to provide services based on what we have seen our average client load to be.
Great. Yeah. What are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Yeah, get to know people, treat people as people. When it comes to culture, I mean, it's the same way that externally we have the mantra that people don't buy from businesses, they buy from people. If they like you, they'll buy from you. Absolutely. Well, internally with your culture, it's the same thing. We can avoid high turnover rates if we provide cultures where people feel comfortable, where they feel heard and they feel valuable. And so one of the things that we've included, and I've learned this from experience, is having things like a retreat, an employee retreat, where we actually don't talk about business the whole time. But I am legitimately concerned, and I want to ask you, how's your family doing? What was the last thing that you did for fun? Yeah. I think that that's really important, but also make it a point to invest in people's professional development.
Definitely.
Because we don't live in la la land where everybody's just happy all the time and we're one big family. We do have deliverables that we have to provide. And so investing in their professional development says to employees and team members, I care about how you're going to do in your career while you're with us and even after you leave us. And I find that that really helps with productivity when people feel like I'm valued here, I'm making an impact.
Absolutely. And a lot of HR surveys show that pay is about fifth on the list of reasons why someone works somewhere. So it's alignment to purpose or vision. It's that, are they trusted by their manager? Are they empowered? And also, are they invested in their own development and professional development? So the huge factors that I think a lot of small business owners don't understand that, and managers and miss that opportunity just to pick one thing a quarter per team member and say, this is one area we want to develop you in. Here's a resource we both agreed you should do, and support them getting through that.
Absolutely. Because one of the challenges of small businesses is offering competitive wages sometimes. And so you have to think about, how can I make a difference? If I'm not quite as competitive as some of the other firms, the local firms, what can I offer as an incentive to get you to come here? And you'd be surprised at how many people, I think, are willing to take a slight pay cut if they can find other benefits to working on your team.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Tell the audience how you've handled balance.
Well, balance is an ongoing process for me. When I started, I had to have these very strict rules. Like, I stop working at 7 p.m. and I don't work on weekends, except that that's not always realistic when you're a business owner, because you can't control when crisis hits, and you can't control when a client comes to you with a last minute deadline. And so now what I do is I am intentional, and I do have some strict, rules for myself in my personal life, but I make it a fluid process, and I give myself permission to change every now and then. So if this week I can't quite, work the way that I want to, then next week, if there's room, I might make up for that. And I also found, and no one told me this when I started, but making my health a priority really helped. So simple things like going for a walk, running during my lunch hour, just eating better, really, really helps with creating that balance so that I'm living fully and working hard as well.
Yeah, it's an investment in your health, because you get it back at work, you get more energy and focus and stamina to keep at it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And a social life is not bad. I'm part of the American hustle culture where it's like, busyness is a badge of honor. And
Yep.
it's not okay,
No.
because if you're busy and you have no social life, what good are you at work? So, be intentional about incorporating a
Yep.
social life in health and wellness. It's okay.
Yeah. How much professional development have you invested in yourself over the years?
I've lost count. I've honestly lost count. But as I mentioned earlier, I felt like I was at a disadvantage when I started because I did not have a business background. And so for me, this looked like an hour a day when I was starting of just professional development courses.
Yep.
And that ranged from reading a book, attending a workshop, or even just YouTube videos,
Yep.
when cash was an issue. But it was a very deliberate part of my days.
Good.
Now it's, I'll find things, I'll look for things online, or I'll, be on the lookout for things that are referred to me, and I will make time in my schedule. But I have invested in quite a bit. It's important. The landscape is always changing.
Yep.
And so if you think you've reached a point where you are, a veteran and you're just great in one area, there might be new things that you need to learn.
I think it was Henry Ford that said, if you stop learning, you're old.
Absolutely.
Have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
Absolutely. I've had a few mentors. One of my favorite mentors was a mentor that I got through SCORE, which is, I'm not sure if you're familiar, it's a resource here in the United States that provides mentors and resources to business owners. And when I found out I had an employee that was stealing from me, he was the guy that talked me off the ledge because I was ready to quit that year.
Yeah.
And so that is an important part of your development, is find a mentor.
Yeah, great. And do you have a board of directors or advisors?
Not for my consulting practice, not officially. I do have advisors, obviously, that work with me, but for my nonprofit, I do have a board of directors.
Yeah, great. All right, we're on our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Sticking with it. Don't quit. It's hard, and it's a natural part of the process. Like, you are not the first person that will encounter hardship in business, and you won't be the last.
Yeah.
And so don't run. Build your resiliency, build your core, and keep pushing. That was the hardest thing.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
I would say the 4-Hour Work Week.
Yep.
Which is not necessarily the traditional business book, but again, because I'm a firm believer in working smarter and not just harder, it helped me with learning how to be efficient, how to maximize the time that I did put in.
Yeah, Tim Ferriss is a great book.
Absolutely.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Yeah, a few. Udacity was really helpful when I was starting. And it's an online learning platform where you can take classes from professors from Harvard and, some of the top colleges and universities in the world. They're teaching classes, and many of these classes are free. And so if you're a small business owner, especially if you're just starting out, you want to make use of that. Yeah.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Some kind of project management tool. So when we were starting, we were using, or actually a few years ago, we were using Monday.com.
Yep.
And Monday.com is not a very sophisticated software for those who are new to project management and managing their internal systems, but it's very, very helpful, again, with efficiency and communication internally and externally with your clients. I would recommend a platform like that.
And what do you use now, Basecamp or something similar?
Yeah, Basecamp is good. I'm not too familiar with Basecamp. We've used Project Bubble. We've used Profs, which is similar to Monday.com. Of all of the ones, 5 Hats is another popular one. But the one I would recommend is definitely Monday.com. And Zoho. Zoho is actually also comparable.
Yep.
But I recommend Monday.
Great. Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day 1 of starting out?
You're normal. You're normal. You're absolutely normal. I mean, and I say that lightheartedly, but I questioned my sanity when I was starting because I had to ask myself a few times, who told you to quit your job to start a business? What were you thinking? The Small Business Administration statistics are not favorable. They say that, about 60% of businesses don't even last past 5 years.
Yep.
And so there was a lot of doubt. So I would tell myself, you're normal, keep going, it's okay.
Well, thanks very much for your time, Andrena. I think the audience get a lot of value out of your journey, and congratulations on the growth. Almost 11 years now, going from solopreneur to now 8 team members and helping a lot of small businesses out there. Plus, you're not for profit, helping women of color as well. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Troy, for having me.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.